Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Hey there. Hey. Well, good morning from Texas.
Good morning from Israel.
Well, I see you had a bunch of beautiful ladies in Eilat here this week.
Don't
The
tell
Miss-
my wife.
You had the Miss Universe contest. That was
I,
quite
I won't tell your wife. What are you doing watching the Miss Universe contest?
well, I was watching Eilat. That's what I was watching.
All right, yeah. Only for
wishing,
Israel, right?
yeah, right.
That's true. I
Well,
understand
actually,
that. I heard the number 600 million people were exposed to this event in one way or another. 600 million,
wow, that's amazing.
because you have all of these TV channels that are doing it, and you have all of the Miss countries, whatever they are. I mean, I don't know how many countries there were. 150. I have no idea. But each one of them has millions of followers on their social media.
That's truly amazing. Well, when Peggy and I were younger, we had the opportunity to judge a beauty contest for 2 years in a row.
Really?
Oh yeah, and I found it interesting.
What was it? Was it the Miss Hebraic Roots of America?
No, it was a small college town in Alabama, and so it's interesting. We were sitting side by side judging with a few others, I guess. I don't remember, but so my wife is giving me her permission to look at other women. I thought that was funny. But anyway, yeah, it's, you got to have the beauty of women to make the world go around. Amen.
That's right. Look, I think that we have we make blessings in Judaism. We bless God over the food that we eat. We bless God over good tidings that we hear. We bless God if a miracle was happened in that where we were. What are you suggesting? We bless God if we still have hair. What do you say?
Yes. There must be a blessing for that.
Yeah. But the Talmud talks about if you see an exceptionally beautiful person, then you say a blessing. You bless God for giving the gift of beauty to that person.
Well, amen. And for us to enjoy, not in a lustful way, but just in an enjoying way,
Yeah, well, I don't want to talk about this too much. It's good.
Well, we can talk about Eilat. Peggy and I visited there several times many years ago when it was just a small little resort area.
Right.
And actually, we were there during the first Gulf War.
Oh my.
Yes, I can't remember exactly what year that was, but
it was 1991.
Okay, so here's the humor of that. Our U.S. State Department was issuing travel advisories.
That's
not
right.
Not to go anywhere near the Gulf of Aqaba. So guess what I was doing, Peggy and I, guess what we were doing at the Gulf of Aqaba? I was parasailing way up in the sky behind the boat.
Did you yell down to Peggy? Peggy, did the State Department let me come down yet?
we were praying that the rope would not break because I would drift over to Saudi Arabia, So we had so much fun down there. We went to, of course, we swam with the dolphins, which was a lot of fun. And then they had a place, it was a little mock Texas town, they called it.
Really? Oh, yeah, I remember that, the ranch.
Yes, the Texas ranch. And so that's where you did your camel rides. So Peggy and I
Don't tell anybody they're camels. They're telling everybody that they're horses.
Yes. So we had this wonderful experience of an afternoon, late afternoon, nighttime camel ride. And so it started later in the afternoon. It was about six, there's only about six of us on the camel ride. And so we went into the desert for a little bit. And by the time we were to retrace our trip, it was dark. So it made you feel like Abraham and Sarah with only the stars to guide you, making our way back to the Texas ranch place. And it was really an enjoyable adventure for us. It was about 4 hours, the whole thing. Very
You remember
enjoyable.
to this day.
Oh, absolutely. We have wonderful photos. And my camo didn't want, we went up to the top of this hill and where the camos are supposed to stop and you get off. Mine didn't want to stop. So he kept racing to the edge of the cliff.
Oh my.
And I'm hollering out to Peggy that I love her and thank you for being my wonderful wife. I thought I was going over the cliff, but somehow we survived, and it's wonderful memories for us. So now that's interesting about Eilat. We went into the bookstore there. As many years ago now, of course, and we're browsing through the bookstore. Of course, we are somewhat familiar with Jewish history and Jewish heroes and heroines down through the ages.
Yes.
So we saw this book on Hannah Sinish.
Yes.
And I picked it up. I saw it first. I said, Peggy, look, here's a book about Hannah Sinish. And of course, we were very familiar with her and her story.
Yeah.
And so the bookshop lady overheard us. And of course, she knew we were Americans, I guess. So she came over to speak to us and said, you know Hannah Sinish? Oh, yes, of course. Then she said, do all Americans know Hannah Sinish? Said, I'm sorry, no, they don't, but we're telling as many as we can about her story and what a great heroine she was and a Zionist, you know. So there's a movie or two made on her life.
Really?
That we've seen. Yes. Yes. I don't remember the name of it, but you can go on the computer and find it, you know, and we have several books on her life as well. So for those who may not know, she was a young Zionist who, against her parents' wishes as a young idealist, went to what was called Palestine at that time. And she wanted to help find her family, and she became she joined the British and jumped out of planes with the idea of rescuing British paratroopers who had been downed in her country.
Right.
But her real job was to try to find her family and get them safe out. So I'm not going to tell the ending of the story in case people want to watch the movies or get the books, but a great Jewish Zionist heroine who lived her life for her convictions and what she believed in.
You know, I'm looking at the, you know, I Googled Hannah Sinish movie, and the movie that came up is Blessed is the Match. Not surprisingly, that's the name of one of the more popular, more famous poems.
Yeah,
it was a documentary. It was an hour and a half long documentary made in 2008.
Right. I'm not, there may be more than one, but I remember that one for sure, because like you said, it was named after the famous poem she wrote.
I'll look it up. I'll look into that. Maybe I'll get it. Maybe I'll watch it.
Yes, it's it's not a light-hearted movie, of course, but if you want to know, if you want your spirit renewed about human beings who rise above the struggles of life and live for their vision and their calling, and are willing to do whatever to fulfill that, it's a wonderful story.
No question about it. No question about it. She's one of the heroes and the heroines of Israel.
Yes, I have that book. Heroes, heroines. I have it here on my bookshelf.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, she's in that book too. Right.
Sure.
So anyway, that's our story about Elat was meeting the bookshop lady. And she said, "Do all Americans know Hannah Sinish?" I was so sad to have to tell her, "No, I'm sorry, they don't." You know.
I thought she was going to tell you, "Do you know Hannah Senish?" And you said, "Yeah, I heard of her." She says, "Well, I'm Hannah Senish's granddaughter." That's what I thought she was going to say.
No, no, that would not have been right. That would have got the lady too excited. So, but we have wonderful, fond memories of Elat, and it was nice to, because when we, like I say, when we went, it was a very small little place, but it's grown a lot now.
It's grown like so much of the rest of Israel also, thank God.
Absolutely. So I see that your prime minister is off visiting in some of your neighboring Arab countries.
In the UAE.
Making good relations, I hope.
Yes, of course. In Abu Dhabi, I believe he is. I don't know if he's going to make it to Dubai also. But did I tell you that Deborah and I are planning a trip to Dubai?
No, when is that?
So this year is Deborah and my 25th wedding anniversary.
Well, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. Congratulations. 25th?
That I think so, yeah. That sounds right.
Wow. Well, you're only about halfway with us.
It's okay. I'm getting there.
But you're so much younger.
24 years ago, you were 25 times longer married than we were. Now you're only twice as long. This way we'll catch up with you soon.
So this is, I'm looking on my calendar, this is December the 13th. And coming up in a few weeks will be Peggy and I's blind date, New Year's Eve, 57th New Year's Eve blind date anniversary.
Wow.
57 years ago.
Blind date. Who set you up?
Now, this is such an interesting story. A man who knew me and Peggy both, of course, thought that we would be enjoying each other's company.
Okay.
So it's too long of a story, really. It was a God thing, really. Although we didn't recognize it at that time that God was involved in it.
Right.
But anyway, our friend who was the matchmaker, we lost touch with him because America's a big place, and people move and live all over.
Right.
And here's an interesting story. For 50 years, Gidon, 50 years, we tried to find our friend and could not find him anywhere. 50 years, particularly about this time of the year, because we're very, emotional about all this.
Sure,
and wanted to contact him and, thank him for getting us together and telling him a little bit about our lives. 50 years, we could not find him. Earlier this year, we found him on the phone, called him. He lives near the Dallas area, and we talk with him frequently now. 50 years later, we found him. What a beautiful story to reconnect with him. Yes. It's amazing, amazing story. The same, we tried all these 50 years, couldn't find him, and finally found him. So don't ever give up. think that's the story. Don't ever give up. If something is important to you, don't ever give up.
Richard, that's a beautiful story about how 50 years you wait, and and you finally and you don't wait with your arms crossed. You wait actively, looking and looking.
Yes.
But and of course that is a beautiful metaphor for waiting for the Messiah, of course.
Right.
But it brings to mind how many thousands of Jews have been looking and looking, not for the guy who set you up on a blind date or some guy that you borrowed a book from and you have the book in your house. I want to return it. Where is this guy? But you know that there have been tens of thousands of Holocaust survivors looking for their relatives, hoping that they would be able to get back together with them. And how many thought that they were the last people in their families alive, yet they discover a relative without even knowing it.
Yes.
And I published, I came across this story, and I published this story on our newsletter about a Holocaust survivor that thought that he was the only person left in his whole family. And this past year, he discovered his first cousin, and they met after like 70 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
Just amazing.
Well, we had our Kristallnacht memorial every year for 18 years. 18, as you know, the number L'chaim for life. And we felt 18 years we were giving life to the survivor stories. We like to think of it that way. But we were very much involved with the survivors and very much part of their lives in Houston. So we got to know, a lot of their stories. And we even went on a Holocaust educators tour that they encouraged us to do. So we were very much involved with the Holocaust community in Houston for many, many years. And we're blessed to be able to encourage them, in their lives.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, we had so many amazing stories. One of the survivors was the only survivor in his entire village. Now,
Sure.
How does that make you feel? Like, why me, God?
Yeah, exactly.
And the stories that they would tell when we had them. And it was so interesting. I'm getting very emotional just thinking about it, because I relived their story. I can see them up there talking as I'm talking to you. And sometimes the family members who were there, they would come up and say, I never heard my dad tell that story ever.
Right.
So they told something came up out of them as they're telling their stories that they'd never told before. And their children and grandchildren are hearing this for the first time. It's all very emotional, of course.
Of course. That is a phenomenon. I'm sure. Listen, I'm not a researcher or I don't have a doctorate in Holocaust studies, but I'm sure that this is a very well known and well detailed and documented phenomenon, that there are different kinds of Holocaust survivors. There are Holocaust survivors that they just tell their story over and over and over again. They can't stop telling it. And there are those that don't say a word. Now, my father was a Holocaust survivor.
I don't remember you telling me that.
He lived in Hungary. And as of course you know, Hungary, what an incredible story. It managed somehow to stay out of the Holocaust for like 4 years. The war started in 1941 or 1939 and ended in 1945, I think.
45, correct.
And so in 1939, Hitler invaded Poland. and then it got started, and then he started building the Holocaust machine. But he only invaded Hungary in 1944. I might have it wrong by a year or something like that. But in other words, most of the Holocaust, Hungarian Jews were aloof. They had their heads in the ground. It's not going to happen to us. It's like, anyway, he got into Hungary. He got into Hungary. Within 1 year, the Jews of Hungary were decimated faster than all the other countries and more. Like 95% of Hungarian Jews were killed in 1 year, and it was a big community, a big soldier. So my father was one of the people that survived.
Yeah, earlier we talked about Hannah Sinish. I believe she was from Hungary.
Yes, but she got out before the Holocaust.
But
she went back in.
But she parachuted back into Hungary.
Right.
Officially trying to find down British paratroopers, but of course she was looking for her own family as well.
Yeah.
So, Hungary had their Iron Cross. I think that was the name of their Gestapo. Yeah, their Gestapo, and they were so brutal and ruthless. It's an amazing miracle that anybody survived them.
Yes, tremendous. And I was saying this because there's another, I think, again, another phenomenon, not only of the survivors who how they tell their stories, but the second generation survivors. I'm a second generation survivor. In other words, my father survived the Holocaust. My grandfather also. But I'm also a survivor. I was born in the United States, of course, 1960, 63. But the psychological mess that Holocaust survivors are, the trauma that they went through, it got passed down to the second generation.
Of course.
So second generation survivors also have psychological, maybe other words, but psychological characteristics.
I think that there is a biological passing down,
right,
that affects the body, soul, and spirit of the children.
I think so.
Now, your mom, tell me about your mom. Where is she from?
Before I get to my mom, I just want to finish this off.
Okay.
I am the kind of second generation survivor that the stories that I hear from my father, they go in one ear and out the other. I cannot retain the stories. Is that amazing?
I'll have to think about that. Why is that?
I don't know exactly why, but it's a well-documented phenomenon. Now, of course, I remember some of the stories, but not nearly as well as my brother, who for him, he's like a photographic memory for the stories. So that's the way it goes. It's all this craziness. Anyway, my mom, she was born in the United States in the late 20s, like in 1929, I think. And her parents moved to the United States from Russia, from Belarus. And my parents met in the 50s. My father, I won't tell you the whole story, it's time is running late, but he ended up moving to the United States. He got to the United States, I think in the early 50s. And I think my parents ultimately got married in 1955, 1957, something like that. And
was your mother from New York or Brooklyn? Where was she from?
I think she was born in the Bronx. I don't know how well you know about New York, but you remember the song, the Bronx is up and the battery's down. So the Bronx is in the north and Brooklyn is in the south, and Manhattan Island runs from north to south on the side. It's a thin island. And Queens is in between the Bronx and Brooklyn. And I lived in Queens when I grew up. And then Staten Island is in the bottom, way in the bottom. Those are the five boroughs.
You grew up in Queens?
I grew up in Queens, yes, the first time around.
Well, I did too, in Louisiana, in a community called Queensboro. That's where I grew up, Queensboro.
Queensboro, Louisiana. Oh, thanks for telling me about that.
Well, it's actually in Shreveport, Louisiana, but
Shreveport, heard of that.
But the neighborhood was Queensboro, so we're kind of neighbors. Queens and Queensboro. Yeah.
Keep that in mind.
So your parents, how did they meet? Do you know their story?
They were both members in a Zionist a club. They were both Zionists. My father, before he moved to America, when he got out of Hungary, he ultimately came to Israel, and he lived in Israel for a year or two. Then his parents and his sister also survived the war, and they were in Paris, and they called for him to come and get together. And he did. And when he packed his bags to go back to Israel, they said, "You're not going back to any Israel. We're all together as a family. We're going to stay this way." So they were in Paris. After a while, they moved to Montreal, and from Montreal, they moved to New York. And so he was a Zionist. He was a big believer in Israel, in the state of Israel. I don't remember exactly when he left Israel, if it was before the foundation, the declaration of the state, or after. But can you imagine being in this part of the land at that time period? What a story. And my mother, I'm not sure how she became such a Zionist, but she was. She was on the subways with a little blue box collecting money for the new state, the nascent state of Israel.
Wonderful. It's a wonderful heritage.
And that gave me a little bit of my background. And when ultimately I discovered a different Zionist youth movement, they were in the labor Zionist movement, which in those days, that was a big deal. That was Ben-Gurion's movement. Everybody wants to, Ben-Gurion, what a tremendous hero. Everybody wants to be part of Ben-Gurion, except for the people who he hated and hated him. But so they went with it. And then I discovered, or God got them to discover me, the religious Zionist youth movement. And so I became a religious Zionist. And my parents were both quite happy with that also.
Okay.
Now my father, my parents got divorced soon after I moved to Israel. My mother came to Israel a few years after I got here, but she left a few years after that. But she was living here for a while. My father never moved here after I was born until the end of his life, when he came to move here. He lived here for a few months, and he's buried here in Israel. My mother passed away a couple of years ago. She's buried in New York. So they're both buried in the Jewish state. What can I say?
Right, I understand.
But I'm very humbled by my family's story, because it is such a telling story. It's a story that so tells the story of the Jewish people and the state of Israel also.
I think each Jewish family, like you're describing, is a little picture of the bigger story.
A microcosm.
Right, absolutely. You put them all together, you get the corporate story. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful story, a fascinating story of God, in my opinion at least, God working through history and everyday fallible people, through our mistakes and failures and our triumphs and our tragedies, working through human beings to move forward his redemptive plans and purposes on the earth. He
That's
doesn't
right.
have much to work with down here, but he gets the job done.
We have a song. We have a song here in Israel. We have thousands of songs. One song that comes to mind is I don't remember the whole part of the song. It was one of the many songs of Albert Einstein, not Albert Einstein, of Einstein. I forgot his first name, not Albert. Ricky Einstein. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. He sings Abraham and Sarah. I don't remember if the song is about the original Abraham and Sarah or some other Abraham and Sarah from some time. And Sarah tells Abraham what's going to be. And Abraham says, some faith, my dear Sarah. If God wants, even a broom can shoot.
Right. Absolutely.
Arik Einstein, of course, is the singer I was thinking of.
Absolutely. The Creator can, as we learn in the Holy Word of God, there's nothing too hard for the Lord.
That's right.
He can do whatever, as long as it's consistent with his character, of course, and his
That's
holy
right.
nature. He can do whatever he wants to do. It's what overwhelms my wife and I is that some reason in his infinite wisdom has let us have a tiny little part in his bigger plans and purposes, and that gives meaning and purpose to our life.
Exactly. That is God's. That's his plan. That is the whole point, as far as I understand it, for God to be gracious to his creations, to be compassionate towards them, to bring them chesed and love. That is that is one Jewish perspective. Listen, the Jews are very busy. Traditional Jews are very busy doing all these 613 commandments all day. We don't always have time to think about all these philosophical things. But those of us who do, one of the most, I think, the most accepted answers of why did God create the earth? Why did God have to go through all this? When you think about the fact that, again, the belief that God is infinite, God didn't start existing 6,000 years ago, or 600,000, or 600 million, or 600 quintillion. Infinite. He's always been around. And he's always going to be around. So here we are, a world, 6,000 years, 6 trillion years. I don't care what you think. It doesn't matter. It's like a drop in the eyelash. It's like a blinking of the eye. For God is around for an infinite amount of time. So why did God, God could have he could have not blinked, and he would continue to have his infinity with no human life, with no earth, nothing. If he managed for in infinity less 6,000 years, so it's not 6,000 years, what's a big deal? But God did it in order to exercise love and compassion towards his creations.
That's beautiful. Can I give you a natural example of that?
Go right ahead.
As a Bible teacher, I'm always looking for natural examples that humans can understand.
Okay.
As they relate to God. Of course, they're always all natural human examples are very, very limited, but that's all we have. So I sometimes answer, well, why did God make us? Why did he bother? He didn't need us, He's, like you said, he's eternal and infinite. He's getting along just fine without us. We're going to cause him a lot of trouble, And I point out that a husband and wife, out of their love for each other,
yes,
make a baby. They want to share their life with another human being. And of course, they know to some degree that along with the great joys there's going to be a lot of heartache having a child.
Right.
That's just the way it is. But their love is greater than their understanding of the sacrifice and sorrow that goes with it.
Yes.
So I kind of say, in a much greater way, God wanted to share his love with someone other than himself. So
Right.
he made a baby, Adam and Eve. He made us. He created us.
Right.
And the fact that we caused him a lot of heartache was not a big surprise to him. He knows everything. He
That's
declares
right.
the end from the beginning. He's already lived eternity. He's already lived all of our entire life.
Been there,
But
done that.
his love motivated him to want to share his life with us. This is how I understand it.
Sounds the same as what I just said, tell you the truth.
So it's a beautiful thing to know that the Creator, like our human parents, if they're normal, love us unconditionally. And even
Yes.
though we don't take out the trash at the right time, or don't make up our bed correctly, or don't eat our broccoli, our parents still love us unconditionally.
Right.
But there are
Yes.
consequences. There are consequences. If you don't eat your broccoli, you don't get your dessert. So there are consequences to rebellion and disobedience.
But I believe that God will make sure that we all get our dessert one day.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. I'm counting on that one for sure, because there's nothing in this world to offer us. That's for sure.
All I can say is I hope I'm not on a diet on that day.
The fasting will be over then.
Yes, as a matter of fact, next week we have a fast day. Let's see what we got for next week. 1 second.
Well,
Yeah, we're scheduled for Monday. Wait a second. Where's my Yom
Trying to think.
Yeah, so Tuesday is a fast day. So we can meet Bezrat Hashem on Monday. I see that I have a 6:30 appointment right afterwards. Now it's 6:29, so we're doing okay. So we'll meet for a half hour, 45 minutes. And the next day there'll be a fast day, and we will meet probably the week after that. And I'm looking forward to maybe seeing you at my birthday party, at the Root Source birthday party towards the end of the month.
When is your birthday?
Well, my birthday was back in September, but we're doing a special birthday event. Let me find out what day it is for you. It is on Thursday, the 30th of December.
Okay.
You're on the East Coast. No, you're in Texas, so that's about 8 p.m. your time.
So that's the day before Peggy and I met.
That's right.
So we'll both have a lot to celebrate.
Well, if you'll be around, then maybe we'll call you and you'll tell a little bit of that story.
I would love to join you in wishing you a blessed birthday.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So keep us in your prayers.
You too.
And we love you. And I wish I could get you some of my books for your birthday. So I have some that I really would like for you to have, but I don't know how to get them to you right now.
Don't worry about that. I'll have a birthday next year too. I'm working on that though. I'm working on getting your books republished. Don't you worry about it.
So I wanted to let you know that our assistant, Rick Ladodge, that we've talked to you about, he passed away last week.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
I spoke at the wedding the funeral a few days back. He'd been with us for over 20 years.
Wow.
So he did all of the office work so I could be free to do what God called me to do. So we're kind of in a scrambling mode, trying to figure out how to do some of his stuff right now. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, Bemet, thank you very much. I was wondering about that. Tell me, was he volunteering or was he as a paid position?
No, he was a paid employee. Yeah, for over 20 years. So anyway, we're trying to see how we can figure out what his passwords are. But God knows, and he'll help us figure it out somehow. It's a life of faith.
Okay, I hope you'll be able to find somebody local, and I hope that I'll be able to help that person also, because I got a lot of experience in stuff like this.
I know you do. I'm going to have to sign off now, but I've enjoyed visiting with you.
Shalom, shalom, and God bless you, sir.
Thank you. You too.